Right, hello. I'm going to try and explain some of the Back to the Future connections with this chart that I use. I call it the double cross of Lorraine. Okay. This is a chart that I just created. I was just number doodling, right? And the reason why I started number doodling was I'd come across Lucas numbers. Okay. So this set of numbers that's in the center of this thing is Lucas numbers running across here, right? And I'd come across, in particular, I'd seen that this 7-Eleven was in Lucas numbers. And, you know, the whole, I mean, this whole chart really, if I think about it now, is spawned from Donald Trump calling 9/11 7/11, okay? And everything that, and other people, of course, picked up on that. And there were channels like Matt over at Quantum of Conscience calling it the 7-Eleven part-time job and everything else. But this is really the reason why this chart exists, is because of Donald Trump calling 9/11 7/11. I thought it was interesting, and I basically started looking at Lucas numbers and then was comparing it with Fibonacci and going through all this kind of stuff. And I eventually number doodled this table into existence, which I have a feeling may exist somewhere else. Because when you see the numbers here, you're going to be like, oh yeah, there's a lot to do with Back to the Future in here. So let me run through what we've got at the top, because I don't want to spend too long explaining it. But we've just got the regular old number line. Then we've got the Fibonacci sequence, or Fibonacci, however you want to say it. Then we've got Lucas numbers, another known set of numbers. And Lucas numbers is basically just Fibonacci, except it's starting on the number 2. I'd say it's Fibonacci, but it's the same. It's the same. What would I call it? The same process of number generation as Fibonacci. Okay, so we start with, instead of starting with the number, well, instead of starting at 0 with Fibonacci, and then adding 1, and then we get 1, and then 1 plus 1 is 2, and then 2 plus 1 is 3. What we're doing with Lucas is we're starting at 2, and we're adding 1 to 2, and then that gets us to 3, and then we're adding 3 to 1, and so forth and so on, gets us to 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. And so it's the same sequence, the same operation to generate this number line, this number sequence, okay? What I ended up doing was I ended up adding in, because I said to myself, well, why can't you start on, well, you can, I already knew this from watching Numberphile, is you can start on any 2 numbers and generate a set of, if you do the process, it will get you to the golden ratio. If you do this process, this operation of adding the previous number, which generates the next number, and adding that back to the previous number, will get you towards the golden ratio, 1.618, etc. Right? And so I ended up doing this next row, which, as you can see, is the first 3 numbers of pi, which I end up calling the pi row. And then the next row, I jumped to 5 on this row. I can't remember my process for jumping to 5, but there's some there's some symmetry in the table when you do this, okay? And that the whole table is about balance, so I kind of like that, and that's why I did that, I think. But this next row I called phi because it starts with number 5. Obviously, you can get to the golden ratio phi by using the number 5. In fact, the square root of number 5. If you do 1 plus the square root of number 5 divided by 2, I believe, will get you to phi. And what's interesting about this as well is the next 2 numbers on, 1.6 is the first 2 numbers of phi. So I called it the phi row, okay? Now, what I end up doing is totaling all those rows, okay? And when I did that, what I found was 2 interesting numbers down here, okay? So for this column here, I end up with 55 for the total. And for the next column on, I ended up with 88. And as soon as I saw those two numbers, I was off to the races basically with this whole chart. You know, that's what sealed the deal for me. The 55 and 88. Obviously, Back to the Future, 55 and 88. So we already have a connection because Donald Trump is heavily loaded into Back to the Future, and there's a reason why he's heavily loaded into Back to the Future, because Back to the Future, everything that is happening right now is to do with Back to the Future, Donald Trump, the Queen. Okay, all these numbers are all surrounding Pluto, plutonium, and all the connections are in Back to the Future. There's loads of them. Anyway, so the 55 and 88 here for the totals. So anyway, absolutely crazy. Now, what I also have here is I ended up picking out two columns in here that were, I would say, more important, you know, or I just deemed them the twin towers right here, these two columns. And I called one the metaphysical and one the physical. I called the metaphysical, obviously the number 5. That's obviously to do with the Holy Spirit. But, you know, like in maths and in science, we work in tens, okay? So half of 10, right, is 5. So this is the balance point for, you know, cycling up to 10. And obviously 10 is just the symbolism of 10. And we know that 10 is where we start over our counting system again, yeah? It's back to 0 and we're starting off again, okay? So that was an important column there. And then, you know, when we deal with stuff in the physical world, what we see around us is we see lots of stuff that cycles. We see lots of stuff in cycles of 12 or divisions of 12, or can be 12 divided by whatever, the sun, the moon. A lot of these things you can get back to the number 12 quite easily. And obviously, like feet and inches and that kind of stuff is 12s, you know, so and time as well, to a certain extent, is all to do with this. And so, you know, this is, you know, observable stuff around us. And so half of that is 6. And so this is where we get these two columns, the twin towers in here. And obviously, the little tower that balances those two towers, Tower 7. Okay, so where to go? Over the years, I've put lots of different symbols in here and put there's lots of different patterns in here. The whole reason why this is called the Double Cross of Lorraine is because of these two twin towers, actually, and also the fact that you can run this central column down through here, and what you end up with is a double cross that is extremely interesting in terms of, like, just the symbolism. Obviously, the Cross of Lorraine, if you're French, you probably know what that is, but the Cross of Lorraine looks a lot like this. The Leviathan cross also looks similar, just put a number 8 on it as well, which gives us, funnily enough, the center of the table is encoded within the Leviathan cross with these numbers right here, the 1118, which is the center of this thing. Anyway, to cut a long story short, oh, by the way, as well, it's not called. So the reason why it's called the Cross of Lorraine is because of that cross in there, not because of Lorraine in Back to the Future. But I'm wondering whether somebody else had the same idea, and that's why we have Lorraine in Back to the Future. I don't know. Now, I've done I've put a lot of symbols in here, a lot of shapes and stuff, and looked at a lot of numbers in here before. And one thing that's popped up a couple of times previous is stuff that happens with a cross that I call. In fact, I should be doing this in blue. Hang on a minute. So this cross that I've used to decode in here before, which is these numbers that come straight through the number 11, because the number 11 represents balance, okay? This cross I called the the Great Scott, right? Because it's like the cross of St Andrew, okay, running through here. And there's a lot of interesting stuff with this, which I'm not going to go into right now. But again, it just, to me, it just ties Back to the Future, okay? Because it's coming through the metaphysical column, and obviously the metaphysical blue, black, or white, okay, and then the physical is going to be more your yellow and reds, okay? But because it's coming through there, coming through the number 11 central, right? And you can see like the 33s on one corner of this and the 187. And so it's a pretty important cross, I believe. But again, colored it blue, and obviously it's inverted with the St Andrew's cross because it's obviously white on a blue background. But this again with the whole Great Scott with Doc, and Doc obviously represents the metaphysical to a certain extent. So again, the Great Scott that runs through here. Anyway, and obviously you got to go back through the old videos to find all the number links with that. But it is interesting, no doubt. But from that from that cross, we end up with the clock tower, which is just the bottom part of that cross, basically. Except I've just got the line drawn so we can see what's going on here. Now, this is where it gets very, very interesting. As you'll notice, the central point of this triangle is the number 14. Okay, and the clock tower, the clock tower has the number 14, basically, with a numerology of 1004 on its when it stops going, right? When it stops going, what actually happens is, if I go to a yellow here, what actually happens is lightning comes down and hits this. Let's get off the second element and let's just go to brushes. And let's just go. Oh, we're on the biggest. So what happens is lightning comes down and hits the top of the clock tower, and then sends Marty back to the future, right? Now, we can stylize this 55 that's at the top of this column, right? So let me stylize the 55, and you'll see that this becomes very, very interesting indeed. The stylized 55, the ZZ Top, you'll notice that ZZ Top did some music for Back to the Future as well. So this is the ZZ Top, this is the lightning hitting the top of the clock tower, which is 55, and then in the film, the lightning is conducted along the wire this way. So when we look at what is underneath the wire as it's conducting the lightning, it's the numbers 911. Okay? Do I need to explain any more? No, probably not. So that's very, very interesting. Obviously, the year that we go back to in Back to the Future this is all occurring in 1955, right? 1955. Now, this is I'm kind of doing this video because Lambda 115, okay, he was just discussing the numbers of 19 and 23 in a video that he just did, right? And I just put a comment, hey, those two numbers are surrounding that number 4, and obviously the number 4, and this is obviously this is obviously like April Fool's Day, and that's what I'm thinking is going to happen sometime in April. In fact, I'm thinking it's going to be actually right after the eclipse, that night, through to the 9th maybe, or potentially the 9th through to the 10th, because what I have right here is the totals for these rows up to the number 10, okay? And so you can see again, like if you totaled all these numbers up, including the number 10, you get to 55, which obviously is the 10th triangular number is 55. So obviously if you total these up, like when you get to, this is another good reason why this is the balance point, this is the mirror line right here, is because if you total up to the number 15, the number 5, it's 15, okay? And then if you total up to the number 6, it's 21. Okay, so you get this mirror right here. There's a mirror right here with these two numbers. Okay, just another little thing to note there. Anyway, what you'll notice is as we come across this pyro here, which obviously is now looking very interesting with this number 14. Remember, in number 3, when this thing, they're celebrating the creation of the clock tower, yeah, at the town festival, is when the clock starts running. Marty becomes the pie slinger. he slings the frisbee to save Doc, yeah, and Doc takes one through the hat. So anyway, again, the references are just mental, really. Anyway, I'm kind of getting sidetracked, but 410 is a completion number, okay, because it's a total for this point, yeah. So that is extremely interesting. That the completion of this pyro to the number 10, of course, which is at the end of the cycle and start of the cycle, is 410, which again is also this point here because the numerology is the same, yeah. And then obviously look what we've got at the number 12 point here with the CMR 114, yeah, boom, right there. And then what's in between that? 254. Obviously, anything to do with 9/11 is to do with Back to the Future, and the 254th day of the year, obviously, to do with the Queen and Back to the Future. So, Back to the Future, 9/11. So, the numbers in this table are just, there is absolutely immense, really. And for ages and ages and ages, I was like, when the next event happens, it's going to be 11/18, and it still might be, the next big event, which is the Hoover Dam idea, right? And this is again the idea of the Hoover Dam. Yeah, if you just extract one of those O's out the middle of Hoover, now you have hover, and then we have the whole hoverboard scene. And remember what happens in the hoverboard scene? Marty crashes into. Well, actually, Marty doesn't. It's Griff that smashes into the clock tower. Okay, but Marty takes a dunk. He takes a plunge in the great big lake that's in front of the clock tower. Why they put a pond in front of it with boulders everywhere? Because Hoover Dam used to be called Boulder Dam, and so the clock tower represents the Hoover Dam. There's 2 clocks at the Hoover Dam. There's 4 inlet towers, 2 on each side. Let me show you. Okay. Let's do this. So we have these columns. Okay. 2 columns on each side. Okay. And then what do we have in the center of this thing? This middle column. Let's do it in black because this. Oh, damn it. Let's do this one in black because this column is the monolith right here. This is the doorway through to the other side. This is the Vesica Pisces. This is the doorway through to the other dimension, yeah? Through to the metaphysical. Notice the numbers again. Remember we had, blimey now, what am I doing? Remember we had the 15 and 21 up here, yeah? And 5 and 2 are mirrors of one another, and what we have is 5s and 2 5s and 2 here. They're mirrors of one another. They form this thing. Okay. Now at the start of Back to the Future, Marty has the face off, and let me fill it full of wine for you so you can see what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the cup here. Okay. This is the cup of Christ. This is the womb. That is the doorway to that thing. Is the Vesica Pisces, right? This thing is going to, I believe, spill open. So 25 and 50 and 52 depends which way you put them around, but the cup's up one way or the cup's either full or empty at some point there. Again, but this is the doorway through, and this is exactly where Griff smashes through. Okay. Anyway, what other numbers do we have in here to do with Back to the Future? There's actually several more numbers in here to do with Back to the Future, and there's several more little references to do with Back to the Future. Obviously, I want to just explain one other thing. 55 is super important. This is what, and I've got another 2 versions of tables that use like the Fibonacci type sequence and these sequences. And again, 1955 is super important. Okay, those numbers at least. And so are the 49 and the 44 and 48. So those, I've got 2 more tables. One's called the King's Cross and the other one's called the Queen's Cross. If you go look at those 2 tables, you're going to see an awful lot of interesting stuff at the center of those 2 tables. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to do with Back to the Future in here. When that lightning strike when the lightning strike happens, right, and this goes across to the lamppost over here, what you end up with the 2 fire trails, which again, the Western Auto Store is right here, yeah, with the 9. Okay, and so you get 911, but what you also get is you also get pi. Yeah, and what do we have right underneath? Right underneath here, pi. Okay, I just wanted to point that out as well. So again, the symbolism is absolutely the fact that the actual film, the actual visuals of the film actually correspond to the placement on this table somewhat is absolutely mental as well. I don't know what else to say about it. What I've got going on over here, if you're interested as well, this thing over here is basically an amalgamation of this number, this number, this number, this number, this number, and this number, because we're looking at the number 14 as being the bullseye, right? And so all I did is I took these numbers and then amalgamated with the actual dartboard. And what you'll find is there's some similarities with these numbers and the dartboard. And so this is the amalgamated version here. You know, the blue is actually the dartboard, and then what we've got is these numbers in red for these numbers here. Okay, so again, you start seeing some interesting connections with numbers, both amalgamating those 2 things and individually as well, like what we just had with the Super Bowl and 9/11, and you know, we go through some of them other ones, but let's not keep it. Let's keep it simple. Okay. 2 more things. Note this: the center of the table right here, kind of depends what context you're looking at for the center, but notice that this is on one side of the center, and then notice these numbers on the other side. Notice the 47 again repeated. Independence Day. Now I don't know if anybody's pointing this out, but it's pretty obvious. Maybe that's why people aren't pointing it out. But you know, we've got this eclipse coming up on 4/8, and again 4/7 is the day before. Okay, so don't forget, before the eclipse and then running into sometime after the eclipse. And what I would say, one more thing, is that I have another version of this table with some scribbled in stuff, and what I've got scribbled in is this 4 row here. And when you scribble when you put this 4 row in, okay, again, the reason why that I never put that in to begin with is because of the sort of symmetry going on here, you know, with the table, right? But when you put that 4 row in, what you'll notice is that this number right here, 4, which would be referencing 49, if we come to here, this number that's missing right now is 118. Okay, this is an abbreviation of this number right here. Now, 49 I believe, is for right now I've got as my date for the Hoover Dam. But Madonna also has a lot of synchronicities with that. But Madonna, to me, is, those two things are interchangeable. Those two ideas with Madonna and the dam, those two ideas are interchangeable. And this is, this whole thing is the dam. Yeah, the inlet towers at the Hoover Dam. Yeah, the inlet towers at the Hoover Dam. Right. Very, very interesting. Two towers on each side. What else am I missing? There's a couple other old decodes. There's one with the two different pictures with the where he's with his siblings, where Marty's with his siblings, and we can pick out some of those numbers right here and some symbolism with that. And again, while I'm just with the Pluto reference, I'll tell you this much: all the numbers for Pluto are right in here. All the really important numbers, right? Some people might not know this, and I did the decode a while back, and I think I called it 911 is Pluto. If you go back and watch that video, it explains why there's, or at least I came up with another cycle for the numbers of days of Pluto's orbit, and it's 90,140 days, okay, which is right in here as well, okay. Now, the 90,140 days is a synodically adjusted orbit for Pluto. Okay, the numbers that people are quoting right now, the 90,560 days. Okay, that orbit is the sidereal or sidereal or however you want to say that. That's that orbit, right? The synodically adjusted orbit is just something that I came up with, and it goes on the fact that every year the Pluto is off 1.48 days from our solar cycle, and then if you adjust through to where our solar cycle will be back in the same place, basically what ends up happening is you end up being at 247 years instead of 248 years, rounded. And that's those numbers there, which again tie into the Queen. Remember, here's the Queen's numbers, 214. And again, there's a difference between those two orbits of 420 days, and between the what am I trying to say here? The numbers between the balance point between, also Donald Trump's right here as well. You just have to flip that 9 round to 614 instead of 914, and kind of losing track of where I'm at now. But where I'm going here's where I'm going. If we take this number here, that 420 day difference between those two cycles is the 17th of November. Funnily enough, Mickey Mouse's birthday is the 18th of November. So I've called this thing the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse before because we have a reference to Pluto, and a reference to Mickey Mouse, right at the top of this thing right here. Okay, so and you'll remember that I think Dave in the picture is wearing the Mickey Mouse shirt. I think I can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's wearing the Mickey Mouse shirt. Anyway, so this is why I called this the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and this is this relationship with Mickey Mouse and Pluto. And again, I mean, you can look at if you look up the diameter of Pluto, it's not actually 1,400 miles. They've rounded it wrong, but they want to give that figure. So 14 again is another link to Pluto. What else to say? But there's a lot of numbers you can pick out from these columns as well. A lot of interesting dates. And also one other interesting date is because we know that 2 is a reflection of 5. Now you can see what this could potentially be is instead of 1155, 11/22, and so you have a hugely important day in the history of the United States of America, which is 11/22, which is JFK's assassination date right here. And again, Marty references that in the film. It's referenced in the film for a reason. I think it's because of this. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, because otherwise I'll just whiffly waffle for another half an hour. I expect that's already 25 minutes, but hopefully that is interesting to people. What have I missed out? Oh, come on, I'm trying to think here. What I've missed out that's important. Oh well, it doesn't really matter. There's enough stuff there for people to get on with. Oh yeah, 1985. You know, remember the whole thing starts in 1985. Yeah, so that's another one to remember. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Okay. No. Yeah, I'm leaving it there. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. 88 miles an hour. You can't drive 55. There's a reason why the national speed limit in America, well, I say the national speed limit is 55 miles an hour. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Okay. All right. Thanks for watching. All right. Bye. Oh, would I put that in here? No, let's not worry about it. Well, no, I will put it in here, because while I'm on the subject of Pluto, one more thing to remember is that in the film Cars, Lightning McQueen, again, Lightning, okay, his birthday, I think, is, I want to say it's something to do with 595 or 59, something like that, right? Now, the reason why I bring this up is because Cars is kind of set on Route 66. I just want to mention one thing. Obviously, Route 66 starts in Chicago, and in fact, the plutonium, I think, was first created in Chicago, or it was first, I don't know, they first got a first sample in Chicago, or first made it in Chicago, and then this ends in Santa Monica, okay, the moon, okay. Route 66 at St. Louis is just going to skirt the eclipse this time round on the 8th. Now, what I want to mention about Route 66 is that it's 2,448 miles long, okay? 2004. Okay, reverse those numbers, flip the 24 over. Okay, we got 4824. Now, one other thing to note about the 66 is the Clone Wars, in fact, Star Wars, Order 66, and the Clone Wars, funnily enough, a few years back, I believe actually it might have been the 5th of May they did that on, or the 9th of May. I can't remember exactly when it was, but they shone up on the Hoover Dam Clone FC, yeah? Clone, okay? As English people would call that, clone. Clone, the Clone Wars, right? I don't know what else to say, okay? I'm leaving it there. Hopefully that is helpful to you. But also, one other thing to remember that is referenced several times in Back to the Future is that the dam, okay, is a shield. Okay, it's the breastplate that Marty uses. It's the thing that Doc uses. It's also the Route 66. I don't know how to draw it, but it's the Route 66 sign, you know. Okay? Leaving it there. Alright, bye.